Okay.
Thanks. Hi, good evening. It's March 11th, 2024. It's just after 7 p.m. and this is the Hatfield School Committee monthly business meeting. I'm Christy Boudreau, chair, and in order for our AI note-taking to be most effective, we're all going to stop and introduce ourselves at the beginning. So Christy Boudreau.
Kathy Englehart.
Rebecca Bench. Jennifer Maloney.
Adam Sullivan.
Connor Driscoll.
Melissa Petron.
And with some hope that will that will work great.
The AI.
So with that, we're going to open things up to public comment. And if anyone is with us through Zoom tonight, there's no one in the room with us this evening, but we do have some folks with by Zoom. Are there any of you who would like to make a comment this evening? Okay, we thank you for showing up and being with us. If you have a hard time hearing us, you can tune in to the YouTube channel as well. So with that, we're going to shift on to the mission moment and just a quick check-in to see if there were some inspiring educational moments that we want to hear about. Ms. Petron.
Yes, it's in my update as well, but one of the things in our school improvement plan was about trying to offer more opportunities for our school choice families to come and network together. And we had our first of 3 of these in the spring. I sent out 38 invitations to our school choice families, and there were 9 families that came out this past Thursday to meet and introduce each other. And we have started a phone tree to have them connect with each other.
Great, awesome. That's good news.
I can go next if that's
Yeah.
okay. We had last week or the week before. We had our school choice prospective student open house night, and not just school choice, but just prospective student open house. And we had 17 families who came, both from in district and out of district, to tour the school. And what really stood out to me, as well as to those who toured the buildings, was the caliber of students that we had leading the tours, because these are student-led tours. Students took them around the school, showed them everything, talked to them, spent a whole bunch of time, and it was wonderful to have that, and it really stood out to the families that were there.
Great, wonderful. Any committee members have a mission moment you want to share? Okay. I don't see our student representatives, so we'll go straight in. Our administrative reports, we have a few sort of extra check-ins to hear from Dr. Driscoll that are in addition to his written report. We sort of shifted our deep dive into a more conversational format, so there aren't slides tonight for that. And we also took 2 elements from our district improvement plan where we said we were going to annually check in on some things that were of key importance, about things like talking about family communication and talking about professional development, and that we would talk about that tonight as well. So we're just going to put that into the report section. And I know Dr. Brimner wishes she were here, but she is not well. And so we have her report in writing. So with that, I turn it over to the administrators.
So I won't go through the whole written report that I've submitted. We're having a professional development day this Friday. It's a release day, so school for staff, but no school for students. And we'll be continuing some of the work that we've been doing up at Smith Academy and other work at the elementary school. A few updates from management and operations where, we continue to address building repair needs both places. We have a recent new roof leak at the elementary school that we're looking at. That's in the library, so it's a different section of the building, which is unfortunate. And we had been hoping to replace the doors. Unfortunately, we had the incorrect doors that were ordered, so we were working with contractors to rectify that and get doors that are fit the building.
Are those the doors that are by the gymnasium?
They are. Yep.
Not all the doors, it's just
those. There's 6 doors. There's 2 into the gymnasium. Yeah,
2 sets going into the gymnasium.
And then there's 1 set of glass doors there too by the community entrance. So there's 6 doors total.
Yeah, those doors have had hard times.
They have, yeah. There was training over the vacation by the Hatfield Fire Department and Police Department, as well as from other emergency services in the area. And so they were continue to be thankful for that, and they were able to utilize our space for that. Something that I haven't updated about yet that we've been utilizing this year. It's something we actually started last year before it became a sort of a grant-funded thing through the state, and it's called the Handle with Care program. And basically, it's a way for schools, police departments, emergency responders, folks that might be privy to, hey, there's something going on in this kiddo's life that might be of concern. You might want to have a little extra TLC for this student. And so we have a protocol that we can update that list. And so anyone who sees that student will see that they're on that list, and they know to kind of treat them with a little extra, maybe extra patience on that day. No information about what's going on, or privacy concerns, but it has allowed us to be able to more quickly put things in place to support students as needed. It was nice to go to the all-school meeting last month at the elementary school. It was great to see everyone there. I mentioned our open house, and as well as the HEF. In terms of community support, they had a murder mystery night as a fundraiser, and it was well attended. So I thought it was a successful fundraiser for them. One of the things that we've been talking about around budget has been some of the increase in costs for transportation. I know that's come up. That also came up recently at a Western Mass Superintendent's meeting. We are not the only district dealing with that, and so that's been a topic of concern regionally, and I would say even broader than regionally, statewide. So folks are talking about that. We have one staff resignation to report. Kelsey Brunel, a special educator at Hatfield Elementary School, resigned. I was very hopeful when I wrote this update that we would have be able to report having hired someone, but that has not happened yet. We've had interviews. We've offered the position to a couple of different qualified candidates who have declined the position, unfortunately.
In the declines, how many times have you heard that our insurance is a factor? Have you heard that?
I have heard that. Yes, I have heard that. And one out of the two in this case.
Okay.
So that is the superintendent's report. Would you like me to go through the other administrative reports before we kind of go through the list of subcategories there in terms of family communication, PD update, and outdoor?
How about we do all the principal stuff and then come back?
Sure. Okay. So shifting roles for a minute to the Smith Academy communication. Again, I already mentioned the open house that we had. It was well attended. We had a number of folks that are current HES families, as well as folks from surrounding communities that came to visit. A mixture of students and families visiting from public and private schools in the area. Update for seniors, if they're watching, that you have until Thursday to get your scholarship packets back if you would like to apply for a scholarship. Last week, something really wonderful that the students did at Smith Academy. So they've been working, we have a group that's been working with SPIFFy. And I'm going to draw a blank on what SPIFFy stands for right now. But basically what they do is they collect social emotional data from areas from the region. And they compile data and information through surveys about risk factors for youth. So risk factors about depression, substance abuse, families' attitudes towards substance abuse, things like that. And they present that data so that, different localities can say, hey, here's kind of what some trends are in our area about youth risk factors. So this year, through a grant, they were able to partner with some Smith Academy students to dive into that data really, really deeply. So they've spent a large chunk of this year, really since like October or November, weekly meeting and going through that data and analyzing what it means and looking at trends, looking at how our data stacks up to data from other towns and other areas. And they had an entire data presentation day last week. So there was an in-school field trip where they spent half the day in the library with other students, kind of going through and presenting the data that they had been kind of sifting through all year long. And it was really wonderful. So we're hoping that those students will be able to join us next school committee meeting to kind of go through that same data and share some of the trends that they were able to see, and we can really use that data to drive what we do. Once we know what the risk factors are and where those exist, we're able to sort of target them. And it was really a nice job that the students did looking at that. We are cruising towards MCAS season here. It's actually March, and so MCAS for 10th grade ELA starts this month, and then the other grades come in April and May for ELA, math, and then science. And then lastly, we're just under a month away now from our most school field trip, I'll say. Right now we have 74 students who have signed up. Important to remember that 23 of our students will also be out of the country for an international trip at that point. So all told, that's most of our school that's going to be headed to either the solar eclipse for the totality up in Burlington, Vermont, or not experiencing a much lesser version down in Panama. So we're excited for that.
How many kids will that leave in the building, and what is the plan for them?
Yeah, so that'll leave about 30 students in the building. And so they will have a day of classes that may look different, but they'll have meaningful work to do, and they're expected to be engaged in learning. And the teachers who'll be there will be able to supervise that and help assist any sub plans that need to go, and they'll have work to do.
Are there any plans for them to experience the eclipse here, like the elementary is trying to do as well?
The challenge is timing, because the eclipse doesn't happen until early afternoon, 2 to 3 o'clock. And so that's after the dismissal. So there will probably be work that they do to it, but they can't actually observe it during school hours.
Okay.
But we will get, I think, to 97% down here. So pretty close.
And Mr. Abel has put in a grant, so he has classes coming for that.
I saw that it was funded fully really quickly last
Yes, yes. Donors choose, thankfully.
Okay.
All right. So at Hatfield Elementary, we held our first school council meeting. We are to have 4 a year. Bit of a late start, but I was excited that the same parents and staff members continue to be part of that incredibly important organization to our school. We have changed our all-school meeting to accommodate a choral assembly. So it was initially scheduled for the 29th, but staff had said that it would be an awfully long time to sit for an all-school meeting and then to sit later on for a choral performance. So we agreed to move that. As I told you earlier, that was definitely a mission moment to have been able to host 9 families that came out and enjoyed some socializing and some networking with each other. It was really great to have so many of them basically always, and it was totally unprovoked, saying the praises of why they chose Hatfield and how happy they are to be here. So that was exciting. And again, trying to schedule at least 2 more of those in April and in May. And we have also officially scheduled our MCAS for April 10th and 11th. Science and technology for grade 5 only will be May 16th and 17th, and MCAS will be for math the 21st and 22nd. When I first came in, I asked or kind of switched it up. One of the things about MCAS, of course, it's an important assessment, but it's a data point. And one of the things that we were trying to minimize was the amount of time that, because of proctoring, that our students were not engaged with their reading interventionist or their special education teacher. So I had basically asked everyone to test on the same day to minimize that disruption. Teachers really gave me a lot of positive feedback around liking that we had shortened that, but also had still put in the request to see if we could test in their own rooms. They still felt like testing in the gymnasium and the cafeteria was not exactly conducive to how they were already doing their schooling. So we have thankfully been able to figure out a way to accommodate that so that almost all of our students are going to be testing in their own rooms or using the second room as so most students might test in one room and then the small group would be testing right next door in the other room. So all students will not be spread out around the building in the cafeteria and the gymnasium like they were last year. So we look forward to seeing if that makes any difference in our scores based on the fact that they're with their own classroom and their own teachers. So.
Anything come out of the school council meeting that we should know about?
We started talking about looking at a behavior tracking form. That was one of the things that I had shared with them, and I started getting some feedback. I've begun creating one with the staff during our PLCs that we're trying to create. There's been a version of it in the building that most of our staff aren't using, but we definitely felt like that was an important tool. So it was great to be able to share that with them. And it's still in the process of being created. But one of the feedbacks that they had provided was that it should probably be electronic, not something that's paper-based, though it could be. And that they were pretty adamant that it should be something that is sent directly to them. If it's going to be filled out, the parents want to see it as well. It can be helpful to be a tracking tool just to see if there's patterns of behavior for a teacher that could potentially bring a student to BST. But both the parents that were there were like, I would like to see that. If someone's going to fill out something on my kid, I want to be privy to it as well. So it's great feedback. So that was the gist of most of our meeting.
Other questions before we shift into DIP update kind of stuff?
This is really, really brief, and it's just honestly a reminder. Can you just remind me how often we do the SPIFFy data?
Every year.
We're doing it annually now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's every year, but it's not every grade every year.
Right.
So I
It's like
believe-
different.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
8th, 10th, and 12th grade that they collect data for.
Okay.
Although don't quote me on that because there are a few different surveys that are like it.
Yeah. There's
So
some
I
other.
may be mixing that up.
Okay.
But
But the students were reviewing from last year.
they were reviewing last year's. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Other questions?
Actually, can I back up to you for a second,
Mhm.
Dr. Driscoll? I had a parent ask me this weekend for an update on electronic payments. Sorry, I know this comes up monthly.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
No, thank you. Because
Yeah.
otherwise that's my monthly
And so
reminder.
I met with I've finally met with the My School Bucks folks today. So we are setting those shops up this week. So the way that it has to work, you have to set up specific shops on this website and tie those shops directly to specific bank accounts. And I couldn't do that until that was approved. So I met with them today. So I'm optimistic that if not by the end of this week, certainly by the end of next week, we'll have those shops out for approval. And then they say it takes a couple of weeks for them to like build it and put it up there. So the timeline he gave me today was 2 to 4 weeks when I spoke with him today.
And that will be
Now that we've had that.
box,
Yep.
aftercare, preschool, all of that.
Yep. Box, aftercare, preschool. Yep. All that will be included.
Awesome.
Glorious.
And it looks like they have information so that a little payment calculator, there's actually data that would enable that to get updated onto their site potentially.
Yes. Yep. And we also have the one that you had.
Okay, if they have their own, that's great.
Right.
But so long as there's something
Yeah,
that
so they
has
calculate how
actual
much they know.
dates, like when we're half days and that's not there. And
Yep.
because that's fussy. Okay, awesome. Well, if we called it a day, I'd be happy right there. That's good news.
Please give us e-payments.
So, but that's not all. Shifting on, in any order you'd like to take that.
Right. We can just go right down the list. I think, so Ms. Pedro and I will probably tag team this as we go through, so we can give kind of updates from our respective schools about those. We'll start with family communication.
I left it there because you had it out.
So if you're joining us by Zoom, could you please mute? Thank you.
All right. So communication update, to me, this kind of falls into a few different camps. So there's the regular communications that we do that are updates, school-based updates, either weekly or biweekly, different kinds of information that's communicated there, as well as updates that might be for smaller groups of people. So class updates that come from either teachers or from class advisors in the case of the high school about events, and then sort of what I would call emergency updates. So things that are relaying important information that so folks in the community are aware of that. So in terms of regular updates from Smith Academy, I do an update every week. And the updates that come, I send an email out to staff or I ask staff for their input if there's information that they need to include in there. So that there'll often be information from the athletic director in there, from the school nurse in there, about upcoming events that impact kind of a wide range of students. And that goes out weekly. Individual teachers communicate, they update their grade book. They are expected to update that at least every 2 weeks, preferably every week. So those updates go through the grade, my grade book that we have on the computer, the portal. So those updates go at that way, as well as communication from about their classes. So upcoming assignments, things like that, that might be coming. Those go to specific classes. They can email their classes rather than a wider range of people. In terms of so that's kind of the broad updates, and then the more specific updates, and then there are the emergency updates that could go to either a small, like a class of students or a grade of students or or the whole school. And last week we unfortunately had 2 medical incidents at Smith Academy, which required those updates to be sent out. That we had a shelter in place, and that we did so to so emergency responders could deal with a medical emergency, and then class had resumed. And those updates, they tend to be a little more tricky because each situation is a little different. And each situation kind of requires a different level of, what can we share to still respect the privacy, but to acknowledge that there was something happened that interrupted learning here. And so when that happens, that will go out to anyone that's impacted. Occasionally that happens in just 1 or 2 classrooms at Smith Academy, but more often than not, and every time it's happened this year, it has been for a shelter in place for a medical emergency at Smith Academy.
At the elementary school, I have asked staff to make or send home newsletters at least twice a month. Some do it once a week. I send out something to families once a week. Staff, most of them have been sharing them with me so that I can see what they've been sending home. I know that some are still utilizing the class dojo also, so some families might get a little bit more information based on individual things, but they are still utilizing that platform, though some are just doing like, bless you, an actual newsletter that might have pictures or at least a quick overview of what students are going to be learning in each of the subject areas around math, ELA, writing, science and or social studies, and any other important things that might be coming up. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Is there an expectation on emergency reports from or do you just not have emergent, like, I think we've seen a few things that have come through. So if medical emergencies would have a notice that go out, are there
Yes.
other emergency things that the elementary, like by practice,
Well, anytime there's any type, well, I sent something recently when there was the police at the very end of the day. So anything in which there's like police or fire in which we would need to let everybody know what's going on, or at least let people know that things were okay. I'm definitely sending those kinds of things out. Yes, there was something recently like around the police being at the building near the end of the school day. But yes, that's important information that has emergency reasons. Yes, get sent out to all families on an as-need basis. And I don't think I've had to send anything out specifically to any type of shelter in place and or classroom evacuations, but if that were something that needed to happen, we would send something out. Again, the duration that students were continuing to, how quickly that then passed before students then got reactivated with their learning.
questions? Is there feedback on communications from families?
Not that I've asked for. As far as like a survey to see if they're feeling that they're getting enough information?
Or just unsolicited?
Not that I've heard.
I can tell you that I get multiple things from Smith Academy. Like whenever Connor sends something, I get 3 copies of it. Whenever Jason Duncan sends something, I get 2 or 3 copies of that. So I'm fully covered with communication. But it's working and it's going through. I must just fall into different pockets that get sent by groups. So.
All right.
So
You may be on the staff list as well as the school committee list then, if you're getting it twice
Or 3 times.
or 3 times.
But I'm also a
The third
parent.
one comes from.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
So when we started looking at a communications plan, part of this was also about predicting things that we were going to need to be in communication about and having some of that planned and ready, just so that we had it ahead of time, that we weren't surprised by like, oh yeah, just because things get busy and we're a small district. And so it just might be a good opportunity to kind of go back. Not now, might be a good summer project, but a chance to do that and make sure that we're just I's dotted.
Yeah, and we've had those conversations as we've gone through the year too. And one of the recent things that has come up with us is about when we're sending things out to start to register for next year. So we've noticed that in recent years, elementary schools have started sending things out more or earlier and earlier now that, and so we want to make sure that we're kind of following that same timeline, sending things out for preschool or kindergarten enrollment in January rather than in March, which it has kind of traditionally been. And we've seen that shift even from in my own household, from having a daughter in preschool a couple of years ago versus having a daughter in preschool now, where we were getting things earlier this year than we were even a few years back. So we've talked about kind of shifting that timeline. Similarly, we've talked about doing the same thing for Smith Academy enrollment when parents start looking around January and February. So having our open houses and informational nights earlier in the year to get that information there too. And that's a different kind of communication that we do as well. And that's the stuff that I think having that timeline to do will be really helpful for. Things that will impact enrollment and will, go out to the wider community.
It's kind of communication related, but the website.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know we're working on it. We're trying to get something else up and running. But that would be something good to have on the website as well as a general timeline of, in January, it's registration for this. And, in a parent section of what to be looking for. I noticed on our current website, people are having a hard time finding the calendar.
Mhm.
And it's under documents and forms, where I'm thinking it should be on that sidebar where it says the lunch menu for each building. It should be right there,
Mhm.
easy to find for people, because
That's feedback that we've got as well, and that's
Yeah.
an easy fix.
And there's a calendar on that front page, and it's just so far down the
Mhm.
front page, and it's not fully updated. But the other piece is about the calendar is you can actually subscribe to it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we've publicized that, but I know it's helpful. I've put it on mine. So you can automatically get the half days on your calendar and stuff like
I
that,
think we need to make that more well known and
with maybe some directions of how to make it work.
how to, absolutely directions on that.
And I would extend beyond sort of that timeline too, but thinking about our, our students, our juniors and seniors who are going through that college application process, sort of a timeline for them too about when, they can expect information about, the school visits, when they can expect information about FAFSA. Thank you. When we can expect that to come out, and having that as part of that communications plan as well, I think would be helpful.
That'd be great. Okay. Updates. I know we've had a couple conversations this year on professional development planning and process, but I think we're invested in our staff. So it's a topic of keen interest. So we had said in our DIP that we would start looking about March, looking ahead to the next year and how that's going. So any updates from PD?
I had, at the last staff meeting, I had brought up with the staff around being able to give them a Google form, which I am still needing to make sure I send out to them to get more feedback. We do have a committee. I've met with my 2 committee members twice already. But one of the things that we're hoping to do better is to actually, by springtime, hopefully, the goal is when staff actually start in August, they know exactly what we're doing each of those half days and those full days. It's not a question of what's going on, but to actually already have it fully planned out. So getting more input and feedback so that the ESPs understand what they're training because again, they're going to be telling us what they need some more support around. And then the same thing for the staff. And we had a conversation about trying to coordinate the 2 committees from both Smith Academy and Hatfield Elementary so that we can possibly coordinate better about what we're offering to staff.
Because if they have that plan at the beginning of the year, if they're taking stuff on the side,
Yes.
they can see how it fits in. That's nice.
And I would extend that beyond just a single year too. And this, we've met as a staff, and we're hoping to meet on Friday as a PD committee to start that conversation. So there are two kind of areas of interest that I'm really focused on. The first is identifying building-based needs and staff needs for where they need support, where they need training, where they feel like the priorities ought to be. And the second is, and I do think we have an obligation to do this, is developing a plan that extends really for 5 years, because that's the recertification cycle in Massachusetts. So as a district, I think we would hope to be able to provide training in all of the PDP categories, they're called, so that by the time a teacher has been with us for 5 years and they're up for renewal, that they're able to pull on what they've done in the district largely to get that renewal. There would be time obviously for kind of focused content-based training, but also training in ELL training and IEP training and all the different training categories that you need to address before you can get relicensed.
Would a 5-year plan also help us track key things that we want to make sure we have everybody trained on, so that if we have new staff come in, it's really easy to see like, oh, I better catch up on that because I'm missing that piece.
It would, and I think we're going to rely on our staff to help identify those core pieces where someone needs that training immediately. So there are certain things that when we have staff come in, programs that we have that we're not going to want to wait 3 years if that's when it comes up in our cycle to train them on. We're going to want them to get trained in how to use this program immediately because that's what they're expected to use. So they may, that may require time, a little initial time out of the classroom to be doing that training. So days where they might go for they might go to a conference or something to get trained in those kinds of things. And that's, or summer training, onboarding. If we're fortunate enough to have any new staff lined up early, we can make that part of the summer program as well. So there are two pieces of that where yes, we would like that to be ongoing so that that cycle can continue and someone can be sure that they're going to get that training. But there are also pieces that we want to have folks ready to go with their first year.
So there would be core training by grade or subject.
Mhm.
Like if you're teaching fourth grade,
Yep.
you got to know this.
Yeah, and
You got to be
honestly,
trained on that.
That's more. I would say that's more heavy at the elementary level where we use foundations. So someone comes in to teach a grade where they teach foundations, they're going to need that training not 2 years from now, but right then. Same thing with SRSD programs that are utilized that we kind of rely on. We want to have that training in place. We want to front load that.
Hadn't we talked at a previous meeting about purchasing software that would help with that?
Yes, and I have an update on that too. So I met with the folks from, it's called Vector Solutions now. It's changed. It still is TeachPoint, but they were bought by Vector Solutions. And there are two components to that training. And the first is, they're both around tracking. So the first is PD that we offer in-house. We can put that out to teachers to sign up for and to get credit for. So it tracks that automatically. So if we do 15 hours of training in differentiated learning, we can plug that in there. Or if we do an hour on an after school day, or if we do 2 hours on an early release day, we can have that in there, and so that everyone who gets it can have it tracked for them, so that they don't have to keep a spreadsheet, or we don't have to keep a spreadsheet and get that out. The other piece is for when they attend training, they can also submit it on there, and it can document that as well in that space, so that they don't have to get a printout of PDPs and keep that in the file until they may or may not get audited by DESE. It's all set to go in there. And then actually there's a third component to it, which is sort of PD related, and that is we have these things called GCN trainings. They're mandatory trainings every year, bloodborne pathogens, things like that, bullying training. Those, there are trainings that everyone has to go through every year. And so we can, rather than using a different site that we have used in the past, we can all keep that all within that same umbrella of TeachPoint. And when we offer trainings, there's feedback forms that go along with that training too. So it's automatically, as part of the training, hey, please fill out this feedback form, so we get some feedback on the training that we provided.
So a year from now, we could be getting a report out from Vector Solutions that would say,
We
this
could be,
is
and if
how our staff is doing on.
and if we're able to make it happen, it may even be feasible for some of the things we have going on Friday to try that. I won't say it'll be completely smooth and ready to go, but
Gotta
at least we
learn
can try it out.
Other PD related questions? Comments? Thoughts? So much excitement in the room. Okay, so now we'll shift on, I think, to outdoor education update. This is our deep dive subject, but it's not by slides tonight, so.
Go for it.
So as you know, we have the forced classroom. Our preschool and kindergarten do still currently utilize the outdoor classroom. The preschool particularly does it around 2 to 3 times a week. They did so more so in the fall and definitely in the spring, kind of stayed away from the winter just because it was so cold. Kindergarten continues to go twice a week. They go year round. They go once as each of a separate, and then they also go together as a whole entire kindergarten unit once a week. Other classrooms, it's a hit or miss as to whether or not another grade will go and use forest classroom. It really is dependent upon what they're doing. So some grades do. 6th grade has gone down there and used it. Some other grades have done the same. It just depends on what specifically they're needing to do with why needing to go down there. 6th grade has done something around early tools. So they've gone down there to like look at how the different rocks and other things that are down there. And then they've come back and done some more like artistic things with it. We also have the gazebo outside. So students, classroom teachers do take students out there or their classes out there to read books and to do snack or other things throughout the school year. All grades do that. And that's pretty much it. I do know that right now our 5th grade teacher just, I had called the Gazette, they had showed up, but I was hoping that something was going to be in the paper, and I've been anxiously seeing if something would, and it didn't end up happening yet. But Mr. Higuera worked with Amherst College to have a game camera that is now placed in kind of collaboration from something that was started at, in fact, there were some students that came down from Smith Academy to also talk about it, but the 2 researchers from Amherst College came to speak, and they've set the game camera in the back and about where they should be putting it to be able to track some of the animals. And then they use this data also at Amherst College. But this camera has been placed in the back, not quite near the pavilion, but somewhere in the back down there. So they are tracking more animals versus the people who might be walking down toward the forest classroom. So they didn't put it exactly down in that area because they were looking more specifically to really see and track the different animals that are down there. So
It should be in the paper tomorrow because it's online right now.
oh,
I saw it online this afternoon and I didn't get a chance to read it, but it had a picture
oh, excellent.
and the article was there in the online version of the Gazette.
Awesome.
So the paper will have it probably tomorrow.
Nice. Excellent. Again, I'm looking for some PR for for the school.
They no longer tell me where they put the camera up at Smith Academy. And they'll dress up as something to walk through. But that's been a great program to have. We've seen some great pictures of bobcats with squirrels in their mouths coming through, and really kind of neat stuff, and the occasional giant falcon.
Just occasional.
So we don't have a forest classroom at Smith Academy, but we do have opportunities like Melissa was sharing for students to kind of ground some of the work that they're doing in the outdoors. So in middle school, it's very frequent in science to have students going outside to specifically in science to look at what life cycles are and those kinds of things. We also see that in the high school as well. So not just the middle school, but the high school as well. It's largely science focused at the moment, where which I think makes sense, and it's a logical kind of extension of seeing what they're studying. You can study nature inside, and then you can go and see it outside, and it's a good extension. And it's certainly something that there's a lot of interest in doing too. One of the things that I'm kind of excited about, and this is may even be a premature update, but something that I've set up a meeting with Desi to talk about this week is the possibility of developing innovation pathways at Smith Academy. So Desi has innovation pathway designations that they give to schools who they'll give that designation, but they'll also support through grants in building those pathways that allow for coursework done in a high school to develop into career readiness. So whether that be certifications, whether that be coursework that is done in conjunction with certifications and builds into the higher level education, so community college or 4-year colleges. And so I'm hoping to develop this for this spring, which would take kind of effect throughout. It would be built throughout next year. So it's it won't be for next school year, but it could potentially start then. Is what I'm calling the Adventure Leadership Outdoor or Innovation Pathway, which would be a series of courses that would lead to certification for things like CPR, first aid, possible, like wilderness first responder certifications, certifications that students can get that are pretty uncommon for high schools, although they're for most of these certifications, once students are 16 years old, they're eligible to get certified, and it's just not a common pathway. And that would allow them to kind of develop their skill set as well as their resume of, okay, I have, maybe it's a lifeguard certification that they're able to get. Maybe it is an OEC certification. They can go ski patrol. And that, it could build potentially into something where they seek out an EMT certification later on once they turn 18. It could be a project adventure certification where those kinds of things which lead to, I'm maybe biased here, but I think they lead to a pretty unique and pretty comprehensive skill set for just being able to compose yourself in those kinds of situations. In addition to that, we would have the ability to partner with some higher education institutes. So Greenfield Community College, they have a outdoor leadership program that they offer. Springfield College has a similar one. It's an outdoor education degree, I believe, that they have. So we could partner with them, as well as some local businesses that would, I think, possibly really benefit from having a pipeline of people of workers that could fall into that, that could fill those roles, because there's always a need to fill a lot of those roles. And I just think it'd be kind of neat to have students when they're in high school to be able to do some of those things that traditionally, they might not have been able to do. I mean, they could be camp counselors that take a group hiking for a week in the summer. They could be lifeguards at some of the state parks in the area. So it's in the very infant stages right now, but I do have some meetings scheduled for this weekend throughout the spring to sort of try to develop that.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Lines up well with sort of our interest of having some things where we're a district destination for core things, because that doesn't sound in competition with anyone else around, which is nice.
No, I don't think it would.
Like, you're not going to Smith Folk for that.
Are you continuing with the fly fishing?
I am. We haven't gone in a few weeks. It's been very cold. We're scheduled to go tomorrow, and I'm not going to say we're not going to go tomorrow, but the river looked awfully high when I went by it this afternoon. So we'll see if we're practicing casting tomorrow, if we actually go on a fishing trip.
The cow pasture that you've used in the past is quite flooded.
It's very flooded. Yeah, we would not go there. And I looked. Our more recent destination has been below the dam, and that's we're not touching that right now.
It's a nice view right now.
It's beautiful. It's nice and ambient noise. But
Feeling you could use the elementary playground on occasion.
yeah, we could stop it.
There's quite a bit of standing water there.
Okay, thank you. That was questions.
I just had a question for Principal Petra. Are we going to be, what about for the outdoor educational, are we doing the farming, the beds in the front again, and will each class kind of
Yes. I forgot to mention that. Yes. One of the things I've been doing in my PLCs is asking if there's a particular vegetable or herb. Many of the staff wanted to be planting herbs, so that, yes, ideally being able to utilize those grow bags and put more compost in those and utilize the front of beds again will definitely be something that we ask each and every grade to participate in. students really enjoyed the taste testing and sampling. So it was a huge hit. We'd like to be able to plant more things that we can offer in the fall and spring.
At either of the schools, do we do any kind of off-campus, in-town outdoor activities? Just taking advantage of the things that Hatfield provides, some history, some ecology, some environmental things, farming, anything that we could do off of our individual campuses that would.
I know that the second grade took a walking field trip down to Bardwell Farm. They did that in the fall.
Okay.
I don't
Do
know.
that every year.
Yeah, they do. And I've reached out to Harrison to see if he would work with us. He's very busy, but he did finally say that, yeah, if I needed anything, just let him know. So yeah, but that's the only one I can think of that we do off campus. We still work, I mean, many of the different grades, 1st through 4th, go down to the Hatfield Public Library on a regular basis, but that's
Only
not
we
farming.
knew of a farm that had like cows and goats and chickens or, something like that.
Honestly,
Trips have occurred.
I just assumed you all did a field trip to see potatoes grow at some point. No?
We used to just
Not
follow the
as a
potato truck
native.
behind our house and fill
Just
up our
follow.
boxes for the winter.
Okay.
That might be a business type of field trip of watching how it works behind the scenes, what happens
Mhm.
after it's harvested from the ground and it goes to the Swaz's facility.
Yeah, that's a conversation I could have with the Swazowskis, yeah.
And I think that's certainly an area that we could build upon too. I
Yeah.
mean, we have a rich community of history and agriculture. I think that's certainly a resource we could tap more than we do. I know I recently had someone reach out to me about reinvigorating the Farm Fresh program at the high school and possibly partnering with farms for that, as well as maybe putting some hoop houses up to grow some of our own things as well. And I know John Halpin, the food service director, is very interested in doing that as well. So I think that's that's certainly an area that we could do more in. We certainly live in the right spot for it.
For sure.
Yeah, I was going to say that more to come on this topic, obviously, but this has actually been a huge topic in comprehensive planning right now. We've got a lot of community feedback about and just like general interest in having the school be like more connected to the town and how can we bring local farms and local businesses into the school, but also getting our students out and just like really taking advantage of the things that we have to offer that are so close by. So more updates on that in the future. But
Soon.
this is all very timely. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to forego additional district improvement check-ins. We can read them if you've had questions.
Can I just make a comment about it?
Please.
I enjoy looking at it, but it would be really helpful, I think, if the comments that are on here are somehow identified by the admin
Mhm.
putting them in.
Yep.
In some cases, you can figure out, you can discern what that means, but like, one of the things was, reshared information on the new program. Like, okay. Or, something about the new evaluation is being released, vetted out new evaluation. Well, that's great information, but maybe a little bit more, or at least if it's identified by which administrator
Color coded, so we
Yeah.
know school.
in some way.
And I think speaking for myself, and I don't know for you either, but to me, when I have filled this out in the past, and I can do a more thorough job of it, I've filled it out almost as notes for myself to remind myself, oh yeah, don't forget to talk about this, or don't forget to talk about that when you're doing the update, rather than a kind of a full description of what the update is. But we can certainly kind of make it more
Yep.
comprehensive.
And there's still last year things
Mhm.
on here. Are they there to prompt you for what to
I
put?
would want to keep the old
Yeah.
stuff because it's a good way to reflect back and say, what were we doing a year ago? Did we remember? Did we want to do that again?
Although I did notice someone added in a 2024 and I liked it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, no.
I think if we're keeping last year's things in there,
It could be
Then-
a tab or whatever.
then
but yeah.
there's, a notation that this is from 23 and now this comment is from 24, just so we see progression.
So we might need just to look at the form and give a,
That's fine.
Yeah, and I'd like to invert it too. So
So
the
it
newest
starts
stuff is
with
at
the
the
new.
top.
that would be
and
nice.
Scroll down and see the older stuff.
Yeah.
We can,
Yeah.
we can tweak that.
But those are just minor little things that I notice when I'm looking at
The
it.
point is we read it.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Right, we're
I appreciate
reading
that.
it. We definitely
Read it.
appreciate
Yeah, I
it.
do too. Okay, awesome. So with that, we're going to shift to the school finance subcommittee update.
All right. So our meetings lately have primarily focused on FY25. Just to kind of get through FY24, there's going to be some transfers tonight, just to rebalance some accounts. No significant shifts. We are going to have a vote coming at a future meeting for some possibly more significant adjustments, pending some additional funding from DESI for circuit breaker funds primarily, right?
Yeah, circuit breaker and extraordinary relief.
Okay. The FY25 budget, we had hoped to have it ready for you for tonight. We're not quite there. It's almost there. We met with finance last week or 2 weeks ago, and they got a look at the line by line budget. And they were supportive in general of our budget that shows a 2.5% increase in town spending over last year. They were greatly appreciative of Dr. Driscoll and Riley's work to build this budget based on past actual spending instead of just on past budgets. Of note, while the budget is reflecting a 2.5% increase in town spending, it's an overall net decrease in spending of about 2%. Reasons for that are school choice. We spent what was left in our school choice revolving account last year. So all that we have to spend going forward is what we bring in the previous year. And we had 8 fewer school choice students this year versus the previous year. So we don't quite have as much money as we were expecting for that. And we also last year spent all of our COVID relief funds, our ESSER funds. So we had $38,000 last year for that we no longer have available to us. Actual school choice tuition might be higher. There's a mid-year adjustment, but we're basing our budget on the more conservative number. And if we get some extra funds, then that will just be a happy bonus to work with next year. Within our budget, when we get there, you'll see that we created a new account to cover for leaves of absence. It seems to be a recurring conversation we have at meetings. Usually, I think last year we had 5 different staff members throughout the year. This year we've had at least 2. So we're adding an account that has some money in there to just plan for that. And it's every year we're having somebody at least. So let's budget for it.
2.4.
2.4 is the average. Notable cost increases, our busing contract, I think we mentioned at the last meeting, but it's up 42%. And just a note that this is similar to what our friends and neighbors are seeing. It's in the range, and other districts have received contracts that are over double what they're currently spending. But in the area in general around what we're getting, in this area, this is very similar to what everyone else is getting. Our sped transportation is also increasing significantly for next year. Contracted services, but the majority of the cuts that we have to make to kind of absorb all these expenses are being offset by our change in administrative structure. So we're making as much of an effort to keep all the costs, all the impact away from learning and away from the students.
So the cuts right now, I think it's, don't quote me, but it's like 71 lines that got trimmed. Like just a lot of nips and tucks to help do that offset. And if anyone was following along on that, I just want to clarify when we talk about the total school budget being down. I know there may be some folks that are concerned about, well, why did we do an override if you were able to cut your budget back? And just to caveat, like last year, our increase was over 10% to be able to do level services. And this is a fraction of that. So we would not have been able to make these kind of cuts and not required an override to continue to fund our school. So just if the question comes up, because 2% of the school's overall budget related to 2.5%, those numbers sound like they're in common, but they're really not in common. And this is 2% of the larger budget.
And in conversation with other area districts, comparatively, we're in far better shape than pretty much everyone I'm speaking to. There's a lot of folks right now who are where we were this time last year, thinking about what the future is going to look like, what it's what they're going to need to fund their school district. And we're fortunate to be in a place where we're only looking at cuts to the level that we are, I think.
Very much so. I've also shared a little bit of background with the committee. If you're interested in the receiving tuition we've seen year by year, because while we've budgeted for $620,000 of school choice dollars, last year, I know we're down a few students. It's not a lot of students. Last year, we didn't get in 700. So we were still in that 693 range. So it's not a big difference. Last year, we still had some money left in the school choice revolving account. So most of our funding, we spend it by the end of the year or it goes back to town. If it's school choice dollars, it can stay in the account and accrue if we have a little left over. But our budgets have been spending down what was in the school choice account since 2018. And last year was like, we got in 700, we spent over 8. So we spent that last little extra that was still in that account. And this year we're living within what we're bringing in based on this year's choice students. And if we can grow that choice enrollment, there'll be more in the budget the next year. So that's.
Yeah, I think we did pretty well with being frugal with our school of choice monies. Other districts spent their entirety a decade ago. Like Granby went through all of it really quickly and then had nothing, where we had set caps and we had planned it out better.
But for quite a, and that allowed for several years of us literally keeping the lights on with school choice dollars.
Exactly.
I mean, we kept our tax spending down through that. Technically not what the state set the program up to be. School choice dollars should be about enhancing your programs. So we're starting to find our way back to that. So thank you, Adam, for putting all that together. Appreciate the update. We also have a budget transfer. You have a hard copy of what that looks like. There's 2 pieces here to transfer. There's regular budget transfers and there's school choice budget transfers. The regular budget transfers, this is shifting dollars between one account to the other. It's not new money coming in and it's not new money going out. It's just right sizing where it is in the budget. I commend Dr. Driscoll and Riley for the diligence that they have taken for the last 2 months to go line by line through our budget and make sure that they're really clear on what's there, what's going to be needed to get us through the end of the year, and to start to right size some of those accounts so that they know all of that information as Mr. Wood departed. So this gets us back to a level set, so it's going to be a lot easier to see. In the school finance subcommittee, we've started the year out looking at some other districts in the state who have had some really surprising budget updates. We won't name names, right? But just massive issues. And we've been working on ways where there's greater visibility at the committee level to finances so that we would not get ourselves in a position where we're spending more than our budget has in it without at least going back with some extraordinary reason to go back to town and talk that through. I mean, there's always the possibility our budget's really lean. We could have something beyond our control. But we're getting more and more visibility. And the amount of work to start that budget from zero base is phenomenal and really helpful. So is the most transparent budgeting process I have seen since I've been on the school committee. And I'm deeply grateful. So I would really love to entertain a motion to,
Give
and I
us
have the total amounts to share with you. So the regular budget dollar transfer is $20,031.94. The school choice budget transfers for a total of $9,052.89.
5280.
$9,052.89.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfers of the regular budget in the amount of $20,031.94 and the transfers from the school budget, $9,052.89.
Is
As
there a
presented.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. So Kathy Engelhardt moved, Adam Sullivan seconded, and that passes. So all of those transfers can move forward. And is there any other conversation on finance before we move on to policy?
Just a great job, you guys, all of you.
Thank you.
And I think from the town standpoint, they have some information they still need before we can move forward. It's part of our holdup. Yeah. Okay. I turn it over, Ms. Bench.
Policy, very, very brief tonight. We have a number of meetings scheduled in the coming weeks. But at this time, we've continued to work on some of our focus policies. Right now, we are gathering data for a potential cell phone policy. We've been looking at multiple sources, including other districts and feedback from our own community. And we're also continuing our general review, especially trying to keep an eye towards anything that is timely or relevant just in general with the cycle of the school year.
Okay. Thank you. We'll look forward to updates next month. Next up on our agenda is to have a conversation about recommended school choice openings. There's two parts here. There's a review of recommended openings, class sizes, and a bit of review of that. And then we're looking for a vote tonight, but the vote wouldn't be on the number per class. The vote would strictly be, are we going to be open for school choice students? So it's a yes, we are. And I think in doing that, we need to say we would have at least one seat per grade, so that we're participating. We will then have time to reflect on this, ask questions, and come back and set those numbers at a following meeting so that we can have some digestive time, but also enable the district, if we vote yes, to start that process to the point of earlier is better if we're going to have more kids. So.
Yep. And so you can see the spreadsheet in front of you. There's also the online version is a little more filled out now. But you can see we have openings we're recommending at every grade level. Some grade levels are actually pretty full, which is great. First grade next year, we're looking at one spot that we may recommend opening. Sixth grade, 3 spots. So some of our grades are filling up, which is wonderful to see. But we are looking in each grade level. We excluded preschool is kind of excluded from school choice because it's a tuition program, so it's different. So we are recommending opening school choice from kindergarten through 12th grade for next year.
So you want that motion now?
It's open for a conversation if we want to talk about school choice numbers or anything before we do that.
Well, I kind of feel like we need to
Agree that we're going to do
confirm
that.
that we are going to do school of choice before we,
Unless it would change
I don't know.
someone's mind.
I don't know.
I'm just curious what's going on right now as far as the rolling admissions, interest. Are we still, what does the activity look like?
We are seeing it increase. This time of year, We are seeing an increase. We've had a few parents call kind of nervous about the lottery process because we can't come right out and say we can guarantee you a spot in school choice. In the event that we had 50 people apply for school choice in a certain grade level, we couldn't accommodate that. So we can't guarantee it until that process happens. I will be making a recommendation, I believe, to policy around reviewing when we do that, because the timeline that we have now really doesn't give. I mean, it's June, so that's really late for families to know. So, my recommendation going forward would be to do something in March or April where we can hold the lottery then, and then families can know one way or the other if they have a spot or not, and then we can kind of admit on a rolling basis after that, because I think that's just fair to families. And I think part of the reason, I mean, last year, if we look at the numbers that we had and the applications we had our number of school choice families and applications that we that was targeted. We had our 40 applications, and we did not have 40 people that came from that, despite being impressed with the schools, despite coming in for tours. And I think a big part of that was the security of knowing. And if they weren't guaranteed to know that, have that security by June, I think that's too late for families to know. But to answer, that's a long-winded way of answering. We're seeing increased numbers. We had a tour today of someone who's very interested coming this year at Smith Academy. We've had tours at the elementary school.
I have one this coming week. We've inquiries about whether or not they can set up a tour.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely, and slow and steady has been the both
And we've seen
tours and enrollment.
Yeah, we've seen enrollment creeping up throughout the year as well.
We're up 12 since October, and some of that's new residents.
Yep.
Some of that's choice.
Yes, and then the rest of them have been choice.
If we do change that deadline, which it sounds like it makes sense to change, we need to be sure to announce that very clearly.
Very publicly.
I think about parents that are planning for summer camp and they don't realize that if they don't do it in February and March, all the spots are full.
Yeah.
So it catches people off guard if they're not used to thinking about it. And if somebody's contemplating school of choice, we want to make sure they know early enough.
It should be on the application for starters.
Yeah.
But if they don't know to get the application.
But then it's the other thing we've got to market. And truthfully, having some sense of urgency from a marketing standpoint is about the best thing we could do when we put it out. Like, we're opening up for school choice, and the lottery is going to be, and if it's April, like, that's a jump start. And you can say it's April with a rolling afterwards. But at least the families who are really excited, who are on top of it, they have that chance.
Yeah.
Because I do think we lost families last year.
Yeah, and I think we have two different deadlines. For preschool, I think they hold a lottery in April if you have more students than apply. Versus for K through 12, it's not till June, which is, again, it just seems late.
And the anxiety of the family is probably the same regardless of whether you're a pre.
Yep.
It might be worth, if we're going to review our school choice deadline, not to put more work on policy folks, but
I mean, it's already on our list, but
It is.
Had a heads up.
reviewing when our preschool applications are due, when the lottery is performed, because other districts are already done. Their applications are in, closed, and you're on the wait list, you're not, and we haven't told families anything yet.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense to just have one deadline, like we're doing it in March.
Yeah.
But even March, I think
Or February.
because I think the
Maybe
Union 38
earlier.
schools closed in February for applications for pre-K
Okay.
for next year.
Wow.
So we need to be sending them out at the end of January.
Yeah.
And I've already talked with Christy about revamping all of our pamphlets and flyers so that they're at the ready for next January.
And again, people that are new to, this is their first kid going to preschool, maybe they don't realize
Right.
this needs to be done this early.
Well, and that's the thing we need to get on the website as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Part of that
There is a pre-K enrollment form on the website. So we had gotten our letter for Charlotte, and we sent it back with Owen, but we could have just as easily have clicked online and used that form as well.
I believe so.
I just saw it tonight. And I was like, oh, this would have been.
Well,
And
and that might be the disconnect between what you saw, because when I had looked at that initial, again, I'm brand new. I've never had preschool in my school previously and where I was. So it was all new to me about having to like create this preschool letter. So I did it last year, and then I was reading it this year, and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. It's so cold. It's not inviting. It's not like, woohoo, come here to, come to our preschool. So I revamped it, but never made the connection, made sure that the one that was online was matched the one that I had sent out to families. So there may have been that disconnect as well, but making sure that we're in sync around both a pamphlet and flyer and PR around it's an attractive and pretty, yet also informative about what our preschool is about and our kindergarten is about for any and all new families. Once we get that census information, needs to be at the go and ready. Specifically, also, I realized I don't think I even put on there, like, as soon as you return it, we'll let you know, but that's something else so there's a few things that still need some tweaking, but definitely have already shared that with both Dr. Driscoll and with Christy about trying to help with that PR piece and the marketing piece.
One thing in the letter, it talked about being like a first come, first served basis, but it's not.
Right. So, and that was an initial thing that was created that I was using based on a draft that was given to me. So yes, there definitely needs to be some tweaking to that for sure.
I'd just like also to kind of commend our admin assistants for the work they've done with that, because we have more options for families now. They can get a form, fill it out by hand, send it in. They can go online. They can fill it out right online, and it goes to them. All those options are wonderful. They do create a little bit more work in terms of just keeping things organized, and they've done a tremendous job of making sure that everything that comes in is accounted for, and that we have all of our ducks in a row.
I'm wondering if we have to look at too, because I don't remember hearing about this last time, is a date that we're asking families to commit to. Whether or not, right? Because if we're going to open up this application process a lot earlier and families have multiple applications out, and then they're seemingly coming here, and then in the 9th hour, all of a sudden our numbers really change.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea too. And that would also allow us, in the event that we have wait lists, which, I mean, looking at our numbers, we may in a very real way have wait lists in some grades next year. And if that's the case, it's nice to give those families that opportunity sooner rather than later too.
And then my other question was, if with the rolling admissions, which is a little bit different this year, if there's been feedback from the teachers, if there's been any feedback from the teachers, positive or negative, just because I can't imagine that as we're getting close to the end of the year, if you're a teacher who's getting kind of like multiple new students every other month, that could be quite stressful.
Yeah, and I have heard that from a few folks, that there's an excitement that people want to come here, which is great, and that our numbers are going in the right direction. But that it does create a bit of a stressor, and that's both from getting new students who you might not know are coming in. You have to build that relationship with a new student, and it's also from kind of the pressure that we've been putting on to sell the school, where there's another tour coming in, and another instruction, and so we're looking at ways that we can help alleviate some of that stress, and so we're looking at that, and we're receiving that feedback.
I think that's good feedback for you to be getting from teachers, in the case that next year we might want to look at dates differently.
Yep.
If that's feedback that we're getting from staff.
There is a point that we course correct,
Mhm.
and we may change the policy about the rolling admission. Like, if we're filling up grades or getting close to that, we may have some latitude to change how we deal with that.
Yeah, and I definitely think that, a lot of these policy deadlines have been the same for a long time. You know, the policies have been reviewed and they've been tweaked here and there, but I think these deadlines really reflect a different educational environment. So I love this conversation. And, but to Christy's point, I mean, we should just continue to review it.
Mhm.
And this is the perfect example of a policy that can be reviewed on the school calendar, sort of like routinely.
Yeah.
Because, right, like if it's not working, then we can revisit it. Yeah.
And something to add to that conversation too is that, you know, that stressor of new students does exist regardless of school choice or not. We always have students moving. This year, we've been fortunate to have a number of students and families move into Hatfield with school-aged children, which is a really, really nice trend to see. Which is, and that's wonderful. And so that, you know, that stressor, you know, we're hearing that feedback and we are looking at ways to alleviate it. And at some level too, that's also part of being in education.
I'm sure that you're already thinking about this, but then offering any incentives like the opportunities for school choice families to connect. If we can get the applications coming in sooner, and then we can have some of these events before, before the commitment date, then if they're able to come here and see it and meet other families, is there a higher probability that they're going to feel comfortable and get to see all the great opportunities here, and that they'll be ready to sign that commitment a bit earlier?
Someone they could carpool with, maybe.
Yeah.
Or
And I think that's a great idea. And I think beyond families, setting those systems up for students as well, so they feel supported, because you know, it is a big change for a lot of students. And I know I've at Smith Academy, Jason Duggan, who's our new Dean of Student Supports, that's one of the supports that he's looking to bolster is the supports for new students in our district. You know, are they paired with like a mentor or upperclassman, or are they paired with, you know, how are you building that community? And it's something I think that he's interested in, not just with our students, but also with our families as well. And I think any way that we can do that to help build those connections is a positive.
awesome. Is there a motion to open fiscal year 25 to include school choice students?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of opening up school choice for fiscal 25 with at least one student in every grade? Clarify that. I'm sure that was exactly what you
that
meant.
was what I meant.
mhm. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So moved by Kathy Engelhardt, second by Adam.
May I ask a question about the forecast numbers for next year to whomever it applies? We're forecasting 10 kindergartners from town next year. That's a low number.
At least from what the census is predicting right now.
Okay.
I was going to ask, is that based on the census or based
Yeah.
on preschool or?
That's on census.
Census.
And then, right, and then there's about 5 school choice students who are already currently in our preschool that could potentially be in kindergarten.
And that was always something that jumped out to me too, is that because preschool is essentially two grade level ages in that one classroom, so it's not like that whole class is moving up to the next year. It's, you know, just the students who are going to be of age.
Do you know how many currently in pre-K are going to be eligible for kindergarten next year?
9.
Okay. That's collective out of town and in town.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And how many does that leave remaining to come back?
For preschool, you mean?
Right. So current pre-K that would still be pre-K eligible.
Right.
If 9 are able, I don't know what the total number is right now off the top of my head.
Yeah, neither do I. I hadn't looked at that number. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I did. Hang on. There are, let me get into my drive. There are currently 21 students total between the two preschools. Actually, that's 20. We just lost one student. So 20 total in preschool.
Maybe 11.
It's 11 to
11.
stay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else about this? It'll be back for a vote in a month. Probably, I'm just gonna guess, maybe with some policy to go with it. Just a hunch.
Nicest table we've seen about school choice.
Yes, it
Thank
is.
you.
So moving on to our conversation for this evening on community, and this kind of all dovetails in, the whole evening has sort of led to this, community building opportunities. So part of it lines up with the district improvement plan, but Dr. Driscoll and I were talking about like, this would be a good time to have a conversation.
District, we had a total of 56%.
We may not be wrapped on the last part, sorry. Anything we want to
No, sorry.
clarify? Okay.
We're just tripping over math.
Is there a math update needed?
No.
Okay.
We're okay.
Just checking.
So yeah, so we'll try to do this update without being redundant with some of the stuff we've talked about, because we have sort of danced around community the whole evening. But there are different developmental ways that community is built differently in different in the different schools and the different classrooms, and there are also different ways that we build community among students, among family, and among staff, and that kind of those three components go into building the entire community and kind of the culture of the school and how people feel about it. So in terms of I can start from Smith Academy, and then if you'd like to go from elementary, or we could go the other way, whatever works for you. But I think so speaking broadly from the whole district staff, right? Because we have only 2 schools, and we're not a big district, so being able to have folks have times for folks to get together between schools has been nice, and that's a push that Ms. Petra has made the last couple of years, and I would say that has had some pretty good results. We've had times during school, during kind of whole staff professional development days or meeting days where we've had the group together. We've also had times outside of school that have been scheduled where staff have been getting together for extracurricular activities just for fun, and we've seen participation go up in those. We had a combined holiday party this year for everyone that was well attended, and just fun. I think, for lack of it's not one of the things that you can take data and say, but people enjoyed themselves, and they were, I think, sort of the district mentality has been building over the last couple of years, which has been really nice to see. In terms of student community at the high school level, there's a lot of different camps that falls into. Certainly having sports teams that are open to not just the highest caliber players, but to all the players helps build community. I had a parent in our office sort of in tears of happiness this year because of the way that her daughter had been included in a team by older players in a way that she had never kind of felt before, and it was just such a positive experience for her that it was really just wonderful to have that. So that community exists there. We have the different club opportunities that exist throughout the day, and really, they give opportunities, but at the end of the day, those club opportunities are about having fun together. I was kind of blown away the first time I walked into chess club at Smith Academy, that it was one of the most vibrant and thriving clubs in our school. And I could see exactly why they moved to X blocks as opposed to having after school clubs, because so many of the students in the chess club were also some of our star athletes on the sports field, and they would never have been, able to do that, but they had that opportunity, and they were having fun doing that. So any time that we're able to kind of build the opportunity to have fun together, I think is a time where community is built. We also have students who feel empowered to take that on themselves. The student council is the one that leads and hosts the March Madness that's coming up, in the snowball and the jolly ball tournament at the end of that Spirit Week. And so they have, they have been empowered and throughout the years to kind of do this. It's become traditions that they own, and that are valued among students and among staff. And so they've built that own community themselves. In kind of conjunction with that, at the same time, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges, might not be the right word, but some of the things that as our demographic shifts to more school choice students, they do present challenges to building community, because every time you have a student or a family that has to drive 20-30 minutes to come to a school or come to an event, if they have to drop their child off and then leave, and then they pick their child up and then leave, and then come back for an event, or drop off for a dance and then leave, and then come back and pick their child up, you're talking, an hour and a half of driving per day just to be part of a community, part of our community, which is, I think, a testament to our district, that you have people that are willing to make that commitment in time alone to be part of our school and part of our community. But it also can create a barrier to being part of the community. And so that's, looking at the barriers that exist. What are they? So trying to find a way to identify those barriers to community, especially as we're trying to include more families and more students, and then trying to develop systems to help address those barriers. And that's something I started to speak with a little bit, with some of the work that Jason has started to look at, is another barrier, and this is just the reality of being in a small community, is when you have students that have been together from kindergarten through 7th grade, and you join as an 8th grader, that can be kind of daunting to do that. I mean, you're coming into a group that can, in some ways, be as tight as a family, with all the dynamics that come with that, positive and negative. And so trying to, create systems that allow easier access into that community can be, they're just things that we have to think about and have to develop in order to make sure that everyone's feeling like they have a spot, they have a space, and they are part of our community. And so that's probably a much longer-winded answer than anyone was thinking, but that's sort of the things that exist, but also that we're thinking about going forward, especially as we're trying to, and we're making a concerted effort to recruit and to bring more people into our community. Okay, how do we support building that in our schools? And I think Melissa can probably share about some of the work she's been doing that's been pretty effective too.
Well, having brought in the responsive classroom consultant back in November has been amazing, because community first and foremost happens in each and every classroom every morning as teachers are conducting morning meeting with their classrooms. It's been great since we've all been back in school full time to do the monthly all school meetings. So we have an opportunity to bring all grades together. I've been getting some feedback about how to incorporate more about preschool, and some of the feedback they've been giving about the all school meetings in relation to their entrance into how long they're staying, and even possibly some participation to help with their students participating in our all school meetings. Meaning I'm giving some of the slides ahead of time. Usually we always start with preschool, so they've been asking if we would switch that order. So we start with 6th grade, so the kids can actually hear and be having more repetition and more practice and hearing what the greeting might be before it finally gets down to preschool. So there's some small tweaks to make sure that we're incorporating our youngest members of our community. I know that there are teachers who, and in both 5th and 6th grade, have their buddies in kindergarten and 1st grade. So we have reading buddies. that are continuing to happen throughout the school year. They get down together routinely to be those leaders for those younger kids, an opportunity to be able to have that partnership so that when they see these students in Smith Academy, eventually at some point, there's a friendly, familiar face that they'll be able to recognize and see. Again, starting off with bringing out and trying to get more school choice families connected, particularly since we had such a huge influx of them after the Christmas break. So that's another way that we're trying to build more community. We have a very active PTA that's been amazing because we have that opportunity to have things like spectacular and some traditional things that they offer. And yet the movie nights have been a great way. And I know that some of our choice families have participated and come to those as well, so they can kind of get a taste of what that's like and be able to socialize. So those are some of the ways that we've been able to build community at the elementary school.
Lots of questions.
I know Owen's basketball coach this year, or coaches, are they're a couple from Greenfield, and they have, I think, 3 kids in the school system who have choice here. One of whom is in Owen's class, and that family's made that commitment to not just send their kids here, but to come here twice a week to coach basketball, and invest in our community, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing that the rec department did that I thought was a great community builder was getting tickets to elementary schoolers to go to high school
Yes.
ball games, which was fantastic. So I'm pretty sure if you see yourself as a Falcon in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, by the time it's time to go to Smith Academy, that's your school. We think about ways to keep our kids. One of the opportunities that I think COVID shifted the community a little bit by necessity. Many of us know each other because of preschool. So it used to be a habit that you would help your little one get in and get settled and help them wash their hands and make sure they were sitting. And the parents got to know each other and built a sense of community. And if you didn't grow up together, you got a chance to meet folks. That changed with COVID. There's probably some good academic reasons about little kids separating from parents. That's a challenging thing. But I'm curious because I've heard from parents who went through it with their older kids one way and now have little ones. So it's like, wow, this is really not the same. And they're missing that sense of community with parents, because I think that's the other element. So I love what we're doing for students and staff, but sometimes the community is parent to parent too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so excited about building that up with choice families. But I think there's still some little things we might do. And I don't want to steal a thunder, but Connor had like a really great idea about what to do with pre-K families. You have to tell
It
her.
wasn't my idea. But,
I heard
at
it from you. Let's put it that
At
way.
a previous school I worked with, the counselor there hosted a boohoo breakfast at the start of every year for kindergarten parents after they dropped their kiddos off because they were all crying. And oftentimes at that point, it's having been there myself, it's harder on the parents than it necessarily is on the students. They're like, great, I'm psyched, I'm gonna go play. Sometimes the parents do need that nudge to sort of say, yep, it's time to let them be in kindergarten or preschool. But that was a nice way that those families could connect. And there were tissues at every table and little candies that they could have. And sometimes lasted for an hour and a half, just because they wanted to talk. But having, things like that, I think could be developed. Absolutely.
I think a pancake breakfast that morning would be amazing for preschool and kindergarten parents.
And the transition from Hatfield Elementary to Smith Academy, and then for the seniors.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Right.
We have
Three parent
boo-hoos.
boo-hoo.
Maybe the student council could host it. They do a great
Great.
job of pancake breakfasts.
Yeah.
Another community event that they do.
Yeah.
Actually, all the time.
My elementary school did pancake breakfasts, and it was a dad cooked breakfast you bought tickets for. And the dads made pancakes and bacon and eggs, and it was a fundraiser.
Didn't we have a dad supper
Men who
thing
can cook.
for a while
Yes.
at Smith Academy that there was,
Men who can cook.
men who could cook. Yeah, yeah, that was an event that happened yearly at Smith Academy, and the dads got together and did that.
So there, I think if we don't have to brainstorm it tonight, looking at Clay's overlooks, but a little bit of this probably goes a long way.
I think you're right. I think any way that we can have events like that that are, inclusive of all our families would be wonderful.
I want to go back to Connor and Smith Academy, that I think while it's also important to build that connection of a grade, if that expands as well to either a grade above or a grade below, because we're all so small. I mean, some schools have a grade that has hundreds in there. So we have room to know the kid that's a grade ahead of you or a grade behind you. And I know that Haley has enjoyed getting to know some 8th graders and seeing them in the hall or talking to them. And that's a community builder as well.
It is, and those are kind of embedded in the school. So you have things like X blocks that are and sports teams that sort of happens organically. But that's also a structure that we're looking to put in place on a wider level, almost kind of like a big brother, big sister sort of model, or peer mentor kind of model, where we have students really just paired up with each other. So you might have a junior or a senior that's a solid role model, paired for just a little hangout time with a 7th, 6th, or 7th or 8th grader who might be might be just really benefit from having that connection.
Kind of an echo of the reading buddies, but in a maybe a study buddy or something.
Study buddies exist. We have a peer tutoring program. So we have students who either kind of self-refer, or maybe their families refer, or teacher refers and say, hey, Connor could really use real help in biology. And we have students who are kind of high academic performers that have signed up to be part of that program, and they say, hey, yep, you're going to hang with Connor for this amount of time during this time, and you're going to work on biology. He's got a test coming up in 3 weeks. And that's been effective for students who have taken part of that too.
Great.
I know we're about to move on, but actually, just as we were talking about connecting families and parents, the only other thing I just wanted to mention is, since we have so fortunately seen a number of families move into Hatfield, going forward, I think we should also think about how to include these families that have moved in, right? We've got this great school choice initiative, and maybe at the younger, traditional entry points. But if we're seeing more families moving into town, I'd love to think about how we can welcome them as well.
I was thinking that as Kathy was talking is not, I think it's a smart idea to maybe open it up across a couple different grades, but not just school choice to meet school choice, but now a fun event for a grade or 2 grades to get together with families so that you can all connect and meet the families and the kids that will be with your kids during the school year, which would be a nice way to not
for these new
to
families
not say, okay,
so happily moved
not
to
new
Hatfield.
family day too, but
In a non-sports way. Not all kids are going out for sports.
You could
And
have
they're
a
gonna
family
connect.
dodgeball tournament.
But they're going to connect if they're on a team, but we want to make sure
There we
to
go.
capture
Yeah, pillow
others.
polo. If we're doing Hatfield, this is a pillow polo tournament.
I would totally sign up for the pillow
So would
polo
I.
tournament.
I'll regret it the next day, but I'll do it.
Oh, I would suck, and it would be so great.
Just afraid to ask what that really means.
Pillow
Pillow
polo.
polo? Think of a wiffle ball bat with a Q-tip end.
Yep.
And it's basically hockey
and they're
with
probably
with a dodgeball.
It is
they're probably the
best
original
game.
pillow polo sticks also,
Probably.
the yellow and
Wrapped in
red.
athletic tape.
It's still a little
The
duct
big
tape.
Q-tips.
Yes.
Yeah.
Miss Landaville was playing that this morning.
Miss Webb initiated that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
As far as I know.
Yeah, sure.
It's a precursor
going
to
back.
hockey, probably.
I'd like to check out the pillow polo sticks.
It can they buy replacement billable sticks at this point?
That sounds like
You
a
can't,
make
I
your
Googled
own thing, but just a guess.
I was like, this still exists. Amazing.
So before we close out tonight, I just wanted to have a quick chat. We've shared online, just trying to look at scheduling some stuff. I would like you to mark your calendars for March 25th. And that will be an open session. It'll be a community conversation hosted by the school committee with multiple presentations. And so we'll put more word out. And then there will be an April meeting. That will be a short meeting, but it's the timeline of that didn't all work. So I could not quickly find those dates on my phone, but you have them in your email. So March 25th is the first, and we'll announce
We have
again
April 1st, which is the next one.
is the business
Right.
meeting, but
Yeah.
we're not going to, I think there's going to be conversations coming out of March that will be up for a vote, but we're not going to take that vote on April 1st. We're
So
going to
you're
give it a
saying
little
we're
more
going to want
time.
another April
There's going to be
meeting.
another April meeting.
That makes sense. We
So,
also have to do a budget hearing in there somewhere.
yes, we will. But we'll do a budget hearing in concert with a business meeting, so we won't be adding that extra.
The one on the 25th is at 7 or a different time?
The one on the 20th, so that is one of my questions is if we want community members to come and be part of that conversation, is waiting till 7 too late, or is waiting till 7 great because everybody gets to go home and have dinner and deal with things and then come? Do you have strong feelings?
Well, I feel like if we do it a lot earlier, then some people may still be at work.
Agree.
I kind of feel like stick with 7 because that's what we're known for.
Yeah.
And
It just,
then there won't
Keep it
be any
consistent.
confusion about,
and we're keeping it on a Monday. Just
Right.
like-
right, if we switch the time up, somebody might miss that and go, oh, but their meetings are always at 7. So
Okay, sold for March 25th at 7. Connor, do you remember the April date? Is it the 22nd?
I was going to ask you the same thing. April,
Can't be the 22nd, that's right, vacation.
yeah, I think it was the 15th.
vacation is the
Yeah, it's the
15th.
week
was the
before.
22nd, yeah, because the 15th is the vacation, so it was the 22nd. Yep.
It's Earth Day, and that's our
Day.
day.
Cool.
So
So that meeting on the 22nd is just slated as follow-up.
it'll be a follow-up
To the March
to
25th.
the March 25th.
And we're going to get the word out
There will be word going out.
This week.
to multiple age levels of families.
Yep.
Across
To everyone.
the board.
Okay.
So I will put something on the calendar so that will populate on your school calendar if that's something you use. But I just wanted to make sure we're all aligned on that. And doesn't change the other meetings we had scheduled.
Okay.
Okay. And we will do our very best to keep that April stuff short. And if we need to have some abstention voting, we'll work that out.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? So anything that we didn't talk about that was on our agenda? With that, anybody want to make a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.